What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of ResTech Well-A-Vision. Today we have another ResTech employee on with us who's going to share a little bit about first himself and then a little bit about what he does outside of ResTech that's pretty interesting. So who we have with us today is Joe Moodler. Now, a lot of us probably know who Joe is, but some of us may not. So Joe, welcome, and why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your role here at ResTech?
All right, thank you, Mike. Again, my name is Joe Moodler, and I have been at ResTech for 30 years. And it's been a wonderful journey here at ResTech, and I couldn't have asked for a better place to work and better people to work around. So, and I thank you for having me on today, Mike, to share a little bit about my gardening experience. My role here at ResTech is I'm a senior organic formulation synthesis chemist. So I work in the reference materials group, doing a little bit of everything, developing synthesis routes for new raw materials, improving raw materials that come in the door for use, working with production on problem solving, production improvements, things like that. So a little bit of everything.
Sounds good to me, Joe. And as he mentioned, why we asked him to join us today is it's pretty well known he has a pretty impressive garden. So we wanted to ask him a few questions revolving around that. So Joe, like I said, it's pretty well known that you have pretty impressive gardening and it's kind of a big hobby for you. But can you tell us originally what interested you in gardening and when and how you started?
Sure. My gardening experience started as a boy. My dad was an avid gardener, and he always put out a big garden. And guess who got recruited to help weed and all that stuff? Me. So, I've worked in my dad's garden, enjoyed the fruits of his labors, and I just always enjoyed being around gardening and such as a kid. And then even as a teenager, I worked on a farm during the summers. And then once I moved home, went to college and was out on my own, when I bought my first house, that gardening bug came back to me. And so I started putting a garden out. It would have been, 20 some years ago, just kind of turning over a little soil and seeing if I could replicate what my dad used to do. And from there, I just it would get a little bigger every year, and I get a little more involved in it. And just over the years, it became a hobby, and I've gotten a little better at it. And it's just part of my life now.
Well, that sounds good. Sounds
like just a connection back to childhood,
Yeah, well, that's great. I think that's awesome, and like it's interesting that you kind of started fairly small and now it's grown to pretty big. So,
yeah.
So what type of stuff do you grow, and what do you have any, I guess, quote unquote staples that you have to have in your garden every year that you need to grow, or it's just not worth it?
Every year, I grow a lot of staples because whereas when I first started this journey, I would grow just enough to kind of enjoy through the summer, but now I'm growing enough food to store up for not only to enjoy at the time, but through the winter and into the spring. So the amount that I grow has increased. But as far as the staples, I'm still growing a lot of the same things. I'm growing corn, I'm growing different varieties of potatoes and peppers and various vegetables. I've got raspberry bushes, blueberry bushes, fruit trees. So I have a wide assortment of various fruits and vegetables that I grow. I actually have 2 garden plots that I grow in. So, and they tend to increase in size each year. So, yeah, I just grow, a wide variety of things, and it's all for storage.
Well, that's good. It's funny, I always think about gardening. I never really consider fruits as part of the garden, but that makes a lot of sense. So as you said, you grow a lot of it for storage and to have to eat through the winter until spring. What types of preservation methods do you usually use to keep them good
Uh,
for winter?
freezing and canning. Uh, I've kind of taken over the freezing and canning operation at home. So that's something I've studied, and I've learned a lot from other people, and and now I do more and more of that. Uh, a lot of my vegetables I both will freeze, or I'll do canning. We can our beets, our green beans, our peppers, some of our potatoes. Uh, we're making jams and jellies out of the fruit, and then what we don't can, we freeze. I store the potatoes and such in the basement in a cool, dark place. I grow usually Kennebec white potatoes, usually some a unique variety. Like this year, I grew Adirondack blue potatoes. They're purple, and I grow sweet potatoes. I had a pretty big yield of those this year. Uh, I take a lot of our green peppers and we will stuff them with hamburg or sausage or something and put those in the freezer. And I have over 100 of those in the freezer right now. And it's just a quick meal. We can put in a crock pot in the morning with some sauce and let them cook all day. So yeah, I preserve things a lot of different ways. One thing I want to get is a dehydrator, because I actually don't have one, and to do some dehydrated fruits and vegetables, for storing as well. Yeah, that's going to be my next adventure.
Have you done anything with that before, or is that just something new you want to try?
Uh, we've done it using just a regular oven, like drying some herbs and things like that, and crushing them up, for use, like oregano and uh, celery leaves and things like that. Just some of the spices and such. But I haven't done like fruits and vegetables and things wholesale.
Very cool. All right. Well, it's always good to keep your skills sharp and learn something new, right?
Yep. I'm always
All right.
doing that.
All right. Well, cool. So, um, obviously with gardens, we spend a lot of time kind of thinking about the spring and summer and maintaining our gardens through the summer. Do you typically just focus on the spring and summer, or do you do fall gardening or anything like that to kind of help provide more produce to get you through the winter?
Uh, Most of my gardening is done in spring and summer. Some of the stuff carries into the fall. You can still, get some kale and things like that in the fall. But the majority of my gardening is done in the spring and summer. But gardening has become almost a year-round thing, though. I've started uh, growing some of my own plants. I start them from seed. And the advantage of that is, I can plant a large number of peppers and tomatoes and things like that in my little containers. I've got a wood stove in the basement with grow lights that I've got warmth and light. And I get those things started usually early March. That's when my garden begins, end of February, beginning of March. I'm starting to grow stuff, getting it started. And the advantage of that is that I've found is I can plant the seed, I can grow the plant, I can fertilize them and give them specific nutrients that they need to get them to a healthy plant, get a good root system on them. Then I can go through and select the healthiest plants and use those for then transplanting outdoors. So then, I start to plant, of course, usually May, as I start putting stuff out. And then, it's, May, June, July, August, September, it was active gardening for me. And then, processing the harvest and stuff, as it comes in and, storing it for later processing.
Very cool. I would have never thought gardening was kind of almost a year-round activity, but that's good. I mean,
Yeah,
what you're doing sounds interesting because obviously then you know exactly, you know, what's in your plants and what's in your soil and all that stuff. So that's
yeah,
always a bonus.
exactly. Yeah. And actually, I began planting the garden, the cold winter months of January, February. I kind of start figuring out what I want to plant, what I need to get to, as far as soil additives and things like that. What kind of space I'm going to need and all that stuff.
Cool. Well, along that
It's
lines,
almost year round.
yeah, pretty much. If you're
Yeah.
not working, you're thinking, right?
Yep. Absolutely.
There we go. Sounds good. So kind of along the lines of something you just kind of mentioned, what types of, you know, stuff that probably most people don't necessarily enjoy as far as prep for your garden and things like that? Any soil enrichments or any special things that you do that you find seem to be most beneficial to getting the most out of your garden?
Soil is vital. If you think about it, without the soil, you have nothing to anchor your plant. So soil, number one, is the anchor to hold your plant in place. Number two, soil holds the nutrients that the plant needs. It holds the water that the plant needs. Soil is vital. You're not going to get a good garden if you try to sow it in soil that's has a lot of clay in it. It's not good, nutritious, loose soil. It's just not going to work well. So having good soil is vital. Whether that is digging a plot in your yard and amending the soil to get it to a good point for growing, or what a lot of people do is they speed up the process a little bit and they'll put in raised, and then you can fill the bed with good soil and compost and get up and running very quickly. For me, I don't use raised beds for most of my things. I just I take good care of the soil in the ground. And the way I do that typically is after the growing season, the first thing I do is I get rid of all the old vegetation, any lingering weeds. I clear the garden out. I'll put down some grass clippings or something that I had from over the summer, some compost, spread around a little fertilizer, then just gently work it in with my tiller and just let the garden lie at rest. I have a wood stove. I burn a lot of hardwood, firewood at home. And over the winter, I'll spread the ashes over the garden. Hardwood wood ash has, good nutrients in it for your soil. It's going to contain minerals. It's going to contain calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, things like that your plants need. I mean, you don't want to put a ton of wood ash on your garden, but spreading a little bit, is a nice way to amend your soil with minerals. Typically, then in the spring, I like to put down compost on my garden beds. I'll get some mushroom mulch or something and put down. I'll spread a little 10-10-10 fertilizer around just to put in some, some nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium into the soil, then work that in. Uh, then when it's time to plant, of course, I'll go through and till in all that stuff into my soil, plant, and then I do soil additives that are specific to my plants. For instance, when I'm planting my pepper plants, I'll dig the hole, put the plant in the soil. Then I like to add, potassium, magnesium, calcium, and a little bit of fertilizer because your peppers need those things, to grow and fruit properly. Whereas, something like sweet corn, I'll fertilize, but then when it starts growing, I just mainly give them nitrogen, in the form of ammonium nitrate or something. So, during the growing season, I'm putting plant-specific additives to my plants so that they're getting the proper minerals and food that they need to grow well and fruit properly. So it takes a little bit of research to see what each plant likes, what they need, because if you're not putting the nutrients in the soil, the plants can't eat. And that's one problem people have. They'll say, hey, I planted a garden for 2 years. It did really well. Then this year, nothing, I had all kinds of problems. Nothing would grow. I'm like, well, did you fertilize? Did you add calcium? Did you add this or that? Well, no. It's like, well, your soil gets depleted. Your root system is what's gathering up. And this is the importance of having soil that's well composted, loose, and rich. You need to have a medium that your roots are able to grow and flourish, because your roots are the mouth of the plant. Your roots are going out and gathering water, they're gathering nutrients and things like that, and bringing it up to the plant and out to the leaves, to the buds, to the fruit, so that everything is growing properly the way it should. Now, if your soil's lacking nutrients and vital minerals, the plant's just not going to flourish. You're not going to get a good root base. You're not going to get good fruit. You're not going to have good blossoms. So you have to make sure you've got good soil and you're putting the proper nutrients and minerals and things in there. Not only your macronutrients like calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, nitrogen, but also micronutrients like sulfur and things like that as well. So that's one thing I do through the summers. I feed my plants periodically, specific nutrients, plus, I give them micronutrients as well. You want to make sure they're getting enough water and all that stuff. So yeah, soil is vitally important. And it's important that you're getting the proper additives and stuff into the soil for your plants to eat and grow and flourish.
Very cool. That makes a lot of sense, actually. So for someone who really knows not much about gardening, that's pretty interesting. So awesome.
Yeah.
That's great stuff.
When you look at a garden, your eyes tend to focus on the plants above ground, which is true. But there's a lot going on around too that you have to think about. You have to establish a good root system. You have to make sure that soil is, good rich soil with all the nutrients that the plants need, because again, that's how they eat. The plants aren't taking nutrients in through the leaves and all that, so to speak. It's coming up from the root system. So
Awesome. Good stuff. All right. Um, well, Joe, we asked you a lot about gardening and all that all that goes into that for you and things like that. I'm going to ask you a question now that I kind of started asking the international folks that I had on here, but I figured I might as well start asking everybody because I think it's interesting. So, uh, other than, you know, gardening, why don't you share a little bit about Joe? What else do you like to do? Any other hobbies or interests or anything like that? Why don't you share a little bit with ResTech about you and some other aspects of your life and hobbies?
Okay, well, I used to be big into running. I don't do that so much anymore. I mean, I still enjoy working out, exercising, walking, doing a little running, lifting, exercising to stay in shape. That's vital to take care of yourself. And that ties into why I grow a lot of my own food is I know where the food comes from. I'm not using pesticides and herbicides. So I know it's good, nutritious, clean food that we're eating. So, and I, of course, have a passion for gardening, for growing, not only the gardening part of it, but the food processing part of it. I enjoy doing that as well. The canning, the freezing, the processing, making different things. That's fun. And it's what ties into that is I do a lot of reading on gardening and watching videos and improving myself and learning from others. I just like to read in general. I do a lot of reading. Uh, uh, I love antiques. We like to go to antique shops and look at things from the past. And I like collecting old postcards and ephemera and stuff like that. It's kind of like a snapshot of history. Some of these old postcards, so they're fun. Uh, that's probably about it, And as far as what I like to do outside of working at ResTech and you know, learning more about science and studying science related things. And, just a little bit about where I live at. Me and my wife Joy and our son Samuel uh, live on a 3-acre property near Penn's Cave outside of Center Hall. It's a beautiful piece of property we live on, and we love living over there. Samuel just started working here actually, so
I did
he's
see that.
yeah, in the reference materials team. So he loves it here so far and is doing a good job, I guess. So
Awesome. So I have to ask, obviously, you've kind of indicated that the whole gardening part of your life is pretty involved. And obviously you grew up with it. So what are Samuel's and Joy's thoughts on it? Do they enjoy it as well, or do they just kind of put up with it?
uh, as long as I do most of the labor, uh, they don't mind it at all. I mean, of course they enjoy the fruits of my labors. if I if I didn't do it, they would miss it certainly. But yeah, yeah, they enjoy it and they help out a little bit, but that's mostly my thing. And
Well, that's
and I
fair.
enjoy doing it. Yeah, yeah. It's just as I started growing more and more things, I think my wife was like, I'm starting to, because she used to do a lot of the canning and stuff, and she, I'm kind of getting a little overwhelmed with all of this. So that's why one of the main reasons I took it upon myself to learn how to do it myself and get good at pressure canning, freezing, and all that stuff. And so I've kind of taken that task over at home. I mean, she helps, of course, and Sam helps a little, but it's mostly my thing. Same with the fire. Right now, I'm cutting firewood, and they love the heat, but as long as Dad does the work.
Yeah.
Which I enjoy doing that too.
Well,
You know,
that's good. That's good.
I like to be
And
a little bit of self-reliant, growing some of my own food, providing my own heat and stuff like that.
well, very good. I'm sure they appreciate that too.
Well, they do. They
Well, that's
do.
good. All right, excellent. So, Joe, the last question I'm going to ask you is, you went into a lot of detail about gardening and what goes into it and things like that. I just wanted to ask you if you have any advice or tips or any message to send to somebody who might want to just get started with gardening, like for myself, for example, who don't have really much experience or knowledge. Do you have any advice or a message to share with those people who might just want to get started from somebody who's obviously been doing it for a very long time?
Yeah, don't be intimidated by it. Start small. Don't go out and dig a 50 by 50 foot plot and plant a bunch of stuff and realize that, oh my word, this is going to be a lot of work. And you give up in frustration because it does take work. When you plant your stuff in the spring, you don't just brush off your hands and go inside and wait for it to grow. I mean, I'm out there every day. I mean, you've got to, you look at this summer, how hot and dry it was. I mean, I was out there every day putting water on the garden, making sure the plants were sufficiently watered. Uh, you've got to keep it weeded, keep your weeds out because weeds, number one, choke out your plants. Number two, they're stealing nutrients from your soil. And so your good plants are going to suffer, a lack of nutrition because they're competing with weeds who are taking nitrogen and nutrients from the soil. So you're just not going to have good yields if your garden's full of weeds. So it takes, then you have to, give the garden nutrients through the summer. So there's a lot of work that goes into it. But like I say, if I enjoy doing something, I don't consider it work. So start small. Put in a little raised bed, 10 by 10. Buy a couple of green pepper plants, buy a couple of tomato plants. Put in something simple like some lettuce or something. Just kind of get a feel for it. And spend a little time studying and say, okay, I'm going to plant a couple of pepper plants. What do pepper plants need to thrive? What kind of nutrients? And just study your pepper plant and watch it through the summer and keep the weeds out. Then if the beginning gardener says, hey, that worked out pretty well. I got some peppers, got a few tomatoes, got a couple bowlfuls of lettuce and enjoyed some fresh produce through the summer. Maybe next year I want to add, maybe plant a few potatoes or something. Just kind of slowly increase your knowledge base of the plants. Again, make sure you have good soil. And, that's the biggest thing is start small. And one
Well,
thing I
that's
do is I keep a garden journal as well.
uh,
You know, I record everything that I plant, what variety it was when I planted it, how it did through the year. And then I can review that in the fall and say, I'm not going to plant this again. Or, this didn't do as well as I thought. And, here's probably why. Then, I improve it next year. Just use that as a little bit of an experience. But yeah.
all right. Excellent.
But yeah,
Start
there's,
small.
there's there's so much to learn and know about it, but that's why I say start small.
Yeah, you don't need to learn it all at
Get
once,
a,
right?
get a feel for it. Yep. Just put a
Yeah.
few basics in and go from there. Don't be afraid to ask for help. I'm a resource. I've talked to a lot of people here at Res Tech that say, hey, I'm having trouble with, whatever. Do you have any info for me? And I might say, Yeah, I ran into that same thing before, and here's what I did to fix that problem. You know, so and I know there's others here at ResTech that are avid gardeners as well. So yeah, you use the ResTech non-business email and say, hey, I want to grow such and such. Anybody have any tips?
Well, I'm sure you're full of them. So there you
Yeah,
go. So there you go, guys. Take that as an invitation. If you have questions on gardening, Joe already said he's a resource. So now your
absolutely.
inbox is going to be flooded.
Yeah, I enjoy it. I don't mind at all, helping other people get going.
Awesome. All
No
right. Well,
problem.
Joe, this was fantastic. Thanks so much for joining us today. I think this was great information. Like I said, for someone who knows very little, close to nothing about gardening, I thought this was very interesting. So thanks so much for hopping on with us today.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, enjoy doing it with you.
Great. All right. So with that, guys, I guess we'll wrap up this week. Another special thanks to Joe for hopping on here and sharing all his information on his successful garden, and also sharing a little bit about himself. So as always, guys, I want you to share your feedback. If you like this episode, please let us know. As always, if you have any requests or suggestions that you'd want to see on some of these episodes, let us know that as well. Obviously we try and put these things together for your benefit, for your enlightenment, entertainment, and all that. So please, don't keep that type of stuff a secret. And with that, we will close it out for this week, and we'll see you next time for ResTech Well-A-Vision. Bye, guys.